Hi again. It's the day after Christmas, and we are in Narragansett, and we have a few hours before the ferry leaves to go back to Block Island. And so we walked this little trail that we've never walked before. Ducks. Yeah, ducks. Were you thinking they might have been seals?
Hello and welcome to the Island Lamb. I'm Diane and this is episode 35. Well, it is January 9th and some of you are still celebrating the 12 days of Christmas and some of you are still celebrating some of the other winter holidays. In our household, we pretty much have wrapped up Christmas. We took the tree down a few days after New Year's and put away all the very Christmassy type of decorations. I left a couple of winter berries out here and there and some cozy pillows and some cozy throws. And it's that time of year where I know most of us, especially us knitters, we just want to hunker down and knit. And hopefully some of you acquired some yarn. There were some absolutely fabulous sales. I was getting an email almost every day. And maybe you got some yarn as gifts, or maybe some of you invested in some needles, or maybe some of you are just working through your stash. I have a little bit of all of that going on. So I thought I would just start with a little recap of the holidays. It was wonderful. We got off the island on a nice calm day. We had a beautiful ferry ride. Nobody was on the ferry for the most part. It was just the two of us, and we just sort of sat in a nice booth and I knitted and we reflected on the week leading up to it, that we had such a wonderful time preparing for the holidays this year. And then we had a nice drive. So we go off our island, we take a ferry, we are on the mainland, and then our ride to my mom's house takes us over another bridge to the island of Jamestown, over the Newport Bridge onto the island of Aquidneck Island, and my mom lives on Aquidneck Island. So it was a spectacular drive over the bridges, beautiful sky, beautiful ocean. Arrived at my mom's late afternoon, sat in her living room with that beautiful angel tree. Of course, my brother joined us and my niece joined us and spent the night. So we had a lovely dinner and great conversation. And then Christmas morning, woke up at my mom's. The weather was as I had hoped. It was in the 40s. So we grabbed some dogs and some leashes and we walked around the block a few times, which was quite nostalgic. I grew up in that house that my mom lives in now. And my sister-in-law made us a gorgeous breakfast to fortify us before our walk. And then by late afternoon, my nephew arrived. And so the whole family sat in my mom's living room. We exchanged gifts and conversation, nibbled on a little charcuterie board, and my sister-in-law served us an incredible prime rib dinner with all the trimmings. And we were just having such a nice time at the table. We stayed at the table and we ate some cookies and we had some cheesecake and we played a little Christmas game, and both nights were just fantastic. And so then the next morning, my mother and my husband and I went to meet my cousin for breakfast, and my brother joined us as well. So we had another family gathering, and then we headed back to the ferry landing. And on the way, we stopped at a path that we have driven by, you know, most of our lives and never really checked it out. And we always see cars there. It's definitely a trail. There's a sign. And it's right on the Narragansett River. So we had time before the ferry and we said, let's just go and check it out. So we put our gloves, our nice winter hats on, and we did a little walk, and it was absolutely spectacular. And I hope I started this episode with some photos of that, as well as some of maybe the other holiday photos. So it was just a nice, quiet, it was very foggy and misty and very gray. And what I was taken with were the colors, all the different shades of grays and whites and browns and beige from the dried vegetation, and then the rocks and the boulders and the ocean and the sky and this mist and fog. It was a very I guess the word might be almost eerie. And it seemed like a really cool way to kind of just let our mind kind of go back over the last few days and think about all the wonderful conversations and the time that we spent with family. So got on the ferry and back home, and then we had a great week building up to New Year's. My husband and I had our regular tradition of lighting a candle for each month. So we go back to January of 2023. We light that candle, and between my husband's calendar and my journal, we just sort of revisit January of last year and how did it go and what did we do. And then for each month we light a candle and we just reflect on the year, and we make some mental notes of what we really enjoyed, what we maybe don't want to do next year or this year now. And one of the things that we did realize is that it was a year of transformation for our home. We really spent a lot of time making some upgrades and to our home, and we're really feeling the benefit of that. Our home feels so warm and inviting and serene, and that really was the goal. But to have it completed and then to reflect on what it took to get there, it had been quite a year. So I don't know what the word is for 2024, but I do know that one of the things that has really been on our minds these last few years, and we're cultivating it more and more, is gratitude and kindness and love. And I'll talk about a book towards the end of the podcast that we're going to read this year that kind of just marries those ideas with some science. So anyway, okay, so that's enough of that. Oh, and I did want to mention that there was I talked a little bit about St. Francis of Assisi, and I talked about being in 4-H, and I asked if any of you were in 4-H, and we do have a follower who was in 4-H, and I just loved hearing her story, and I shared a little bit more with her, and so I'll share a little bit more with you. So my dad was a 4-H'er, and we grew up on Aquidneck Island, which is the same island my mom lives on right now, and my dad grew up on a dairy farm, and he was in 4-H in the agricultural division. And he wants, so like with Boy Scouts, like Eagle Scout is as high as you can go, and I know there's a level with Girl Scouts, which is as high as you can go. Well, in 4-H, it was to go to the National Congress and to be sent to the National Congress by a sponsor. That was the apex of 4-H. And so my dad was in the farming sector, and he grew some of the largest and best beefsteak tomatoes in the state of Rhode Island, and he competed with other states, and he won that award, and he was sponsored by Alice Charmer. And Alice Charmer is a farming equipment manufacturer. And so when I was little, my dad, talked to me about 4-H. I had tried Girl Scouts. It just didn't seem to work for me. We didn't live on a farm at that point and grow a lot of vegetables, so I wasn't sure about 4-H. And I found a club that was concentrating on naturalist, going out into the woods and collecting greens and learning about greens and learning about the natural indigenous plants in the area, and it was called the Naturalist Club, and I joined that club, and I found that I needed more, and so I became a junior leader with the support of my mom and my 4-H agent, and I started a club called the Hook and Eye, and we were sponsored by a local fabric shop, and so we did sewing, and I competed in public speaking, and but mostly sewing and what they called dress review at the time. And I followed in my dad's footsteps, and I went to Chicago with the National Congress, and I was sponsored by Simplicity Pattern Company. So that time that I spent with 4-H really shaped, I think, my life, and gave me confidence to speak in front of others, gave me the confidence to make my own clothes, and my mom was my guided me through that. As a junior leader, you had to have somebody who could control the meetings and help us stay on track with some of our goals. And so I thank my mom for that, and I thank 4-H. Okay, so what am I wearing? Well, this is a sweater that I was thinking about what were the sweaters that I wore mostly this year. And certainly my number 9 sweater, and I'll include a photo here. I think I had it on the mannequin on one of my very first episodes. I love that sweater. That is by my favorite things. It's the number 9 sweater. It's a raglan. I wear that sweater at least once a week, if not twice. It's perfect with jeans. It's great with tights and boots, and I wear a lot of tights and boots, or stretchy jeans and tall boots. And I had made that a little bit longer, and I love that it's got a nice long sleeve. It's got a nice turtleneck. So that was probably my most worn sweater this year. My second most worn sweater, interestingly enough, is a sweater I've never even discussed with you, and it's called the Valine. It's a V-neck, And I'm going to just tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to link this. I'm pretty sure this is in Ravelry. So it's by Mary Annarella, and it looks like this pattern goes back to 2013. And I'll just show you the cover because you're going to see a little chemical equation here. And what is very interesting, and why I think it's probably one of my most worn sweater, is the fit. Can you see that beautiful set-in shoulder? This gorgeous V-neck. Now, I didn't make it very long. I wanted it to be like good with high-waisted pants, but you can make this in a number of different weight yarns, and you can modify it, and that's what this sweater is all about. So I'm just going to read you a little bit. The Valine is an essential amino acid needed in the diet in order for the body to build proteins. The Valine pullover is designed to serve as an essential to the wardrobe with its clean lines, set-in 3/4 sleeves, and a not too deep V-neck. It's worked from the shoulder down. The set-in sleeves are created simultaneously with the upper bodice in a technique originally described by Barbara Walker. Make it in a basic sock yarn for an everyday go-to sweater, or jazz it up with special luxury fiber yarn. Either way, you're sure to look wonderful with a custom fit. So to continue with this pattern a little bit, it's really about shaping. I know a lot of us, and I see this all the time when I watch other people's podcasts, especially when I'm thinking about how is something going to fit me. We've talked about this before. If you're going to invest in the yarn and you're going to spend the time, you want it to fit and you want it to look professional. And all that comes down to, finishing and the fit. So this pattern, it's a lot of pages. So, I would suggest if you're thinking about learning how to get a better fit, check this out and read it like, over a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, without the intention of knitting the sweater yet. Just let yourself enjoy the read and then think about what you've read and then maybe go back and think about it again. So one of the things that is so, I think, fantastic about this pattern is regarding horizontal bust darts. And she uses the abbreviation HBD. So what is that? How is that accomplished in this pattern? Is through short rows. So there's a lot, if you're curvy, if you're busty, and you have, maybe you have a narrow waist, but maybe you're large in the bust. And you know what? We think that we'll just make the bigger size to accommodate maybe some of that bust measurement. But what happens is most people don't have that going on in their back. So the back ends up loose, the bust ends up fitted, and the waist maybe doesn't fit you right. So this is all about shaping for the bust and shaping for the waist. And I think it's probably why it's one of my most worn sweaters, because it fits me like a glove. So if you just want something to read on a cold morning or a cold night and over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, it's called the Valine. I will link. It's the essential pullover, and there's a lot to be learned here. I'm going to show you this little, let's see, I just saw it. This little, see what we're talking about here? Making room for your bust without it altering the rest of your sweater. Okay, so that's what I have on. I love it. I made it in black. I'm going to make it again. I think this was, I made it a while ago. I think this is a heavy sport weight, maybe a light fingering weight. I definitely want to make this again. I have some linen quill, so I've been thinking about that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but it's a staple in my closet. Okay, so what's on the mannequin? Well, I showed this to you, I think 2 episodes ago. This is the Fossveien. And the last time we chatted, I had a little dilemma because I had the patterns were not matching up on the body and the sleeve. And I really like that in my sweaters. I like to have some symmetry here. And what was happening is this was way up here and the sleeves were way down here. And it was right before Christmas, and I couldn't think about it. I was working on my sister-in-law's fisherman knit sweater, and so I just let it sit. And so this week I picked it up again, I tried it on, and I said, well, it's clear what the problem is. The problem is I needed the body to be longer. For me, this is supposed to be a cropped sweater. I didn't want it super cropped. So I realized that if I just added, and I had already added 1 extra cable, but if I just added 2 more extra cables, and then started my pattern here, that when I put this on, it would perfectly match up with the pattern on the sleeve. So that's where I'm at. I'm working on my rib. I need to try this on again and just see where I'm at, and then I will work on the rib for the sleeve. And I'm very, very pleased I did that. I wasn't sure if I was gonna have to, I just dropped a few stitches here. I wasn't sure if I wanted to rip out the sleeves or if I was gonna rip out the body, but it didn't take me long to realize that the body was the problem. I just hadn't made it long enough. I have enjoyed knitting this sweater, and so for me to have to rip out a little bit and then re-knit was no problem at all. I'm using Sport Weight yarn by Cascade 220. I thought I had that right here, but I don't. So it's Cascade 220 Sport Weight non-superwash, and it feels beautiful, and they have an array of colors. I think they have maybe, I'm not sure if it's 23 or 32. I have a tendency to reverse my numbers, but an array of different colors. And I'm loving this neck. It's got a very nice little neckline. It's got a cable. There are pearl stitches. I loved the, and I did kind of take a look. You only are ever carrying 2 yarns at once. So you're only managing 2 yarns. I can't wait to wear this, and I'm hoping I'm going to finish this up over the next day because I don't have that much more to go on the rib. And then as you can see, I already have the rib started on one of the sleeves, and then I just have to do the rib on the second sleeve. So this is going to be a winner. And I have a pair of kind of stretchy trousers that are in that dark green. So I think that's going to just be a great addition to my wardrobe. All right, so what else? What am I thinking about? Well, I had mentioned to you last year, right around this time, that this is the time of year that it's easier for us to get off the island if we don't have storms, which right now we've had lots of storms, but it's a good time for us to get off the island. We don't have to, deal with tourism and, car reservations with the ferry. We can come and go pretty easily. It's a good time of year for us to visit friends and family, and it's a good time of year for us to go on vacation. So, like I said last year, I don't know how regularly I will podcast over the next couple of months. I will pop in. I do plan to wind the yarn for my fern sweater. That is a Knitting for Olive pattern that I mentioned to you last week. And here's the pattern right here. As the interview, I saw this on the interview with Fruity Knitting, and so I'm going to start winding this today. This is the gorgeous Knitting for Olive mohair, and I'm using Moondrake fingering yarn, and I can't wait to get started on this. So I want to finish my Fossveien first, and then I'm going to wind this, and I'm going to start gauging for this sweater. So that's what I've got on my mind right now. As far as 2024 knits, I really don't have a plan. I know I've been watching a lot of podcasters who have reviewed their 2023 wears, like what did they really wear. Another sweater I wore quite a bit was the Avaris. That was that beautiful white turtleneck that had that very interesting construction. I wore that quite a bit. Again, a white sweater in the winter I think is just fabulous with a black coat and black jeans or high-waisted jeans. And the other sweater I wore a lot was my Woolen Honey by Andrea Mowry, and I wore that with nothing underneath it but a camisole, or with a blue denim, a lightweight blue denim shirt with a collar sticking up. I loved that look with denim jeans. So I think of all the sweaters I made this year, those are the ones I wore the most. The number 9, the Valine, the Avaris, the Woolen Honey, and the occasional sweaters. Of course, I wore my ranunculus over the holidays. I mean, to me, the one I made in that mohair, it just says holiday sweater. And I wore my mohair, my teal mohair sweater that I wore last Christmas in my podcast that had the Swarovski buttons. But so I want to think about that a little bit before I decide what I'm going to knit this year, because, I knit quite a few items and I didn't wear all the items. And what I keep going to is a classic fit, basic piece. And that is what my wardrobe seems to need and want. So I'm thinking about another V-neck. I definitely am thinking about another number 9. I have a situation like this in my stash where I have a nice blue and I have a mohair, and I might have enough to make that. So those are the things I'm thinking about. Of course, I'm going to keep socks on the needles all the time, whether I'm gifting them or keeping them for myself. That's kind of what I'm thinking about for my knitting in 2024. I feel like last year was the year I upgraded my needles. I have all my needles. I'm happy with my Chaogus, my shorties, and my big set. And I feel very grateful that I have all my tools. I didn't feel like I had to buy any knitting books this year, though I will say the Knitting for Olive book has been on my mind. I know there's a lot of children knits and adults in that. So that's why I shied away from it initially, children knits, but I don't know. I have a great niece in California. So I might pick up that book. Okay, so let's see, what else did I want to tell you about? Oh yes, I was talking about knitting socks. I think I talk about knitting socks in almost every podcast because I'm always knitting socks. And I mentioned in my last episode that I reinforced the heels on my brother's socks. And sometimes I even reinforce the toes depending on the yarn I'm using. And somebody asked me, well, what do you use to reinforce? Well, you saw my method of knitting socks is I use a heel gusset, a flap and gusset. But I also have these little skeins of yarn, and they're pretty fine. Let's see if I can get one out so you can see. It's almost like a heavy duty thread. Okay, can you see that? It's almost like a lace weight. And I have them in a variety of different colors. And I will include in the show notes the manufacturer because I can't think of it off the top of my head. I think it's like Lang Jawoll or something like that. Their wool, and I just carry a strand of this in my heels or in my toes. So, you know, when you get to that last little bit of your toe, or maybe you work toe up, so you would start with this. If you do a fish lip toe, maybe you add a little bit of that. So like in the case of my brother's socks and also mine, I wear my socks inside boots. And so, you know, your heel could be rubbing, and that's where I usually will wear out my socks. And that's where my brother might wear out his socks. So I find this really works. You probably could use any lace weight yarn, but these are kind of pretty and they kind of perk up the pattern a little bit. And I do have just a basic, like kind of marled gray, black, brown that looks good with really any neutral. All right, so let's see. Okay, so I wanted to tell you about a gift I got this year for Christmas from my beautiful cousin, Catherine. Hi, Catherine. So a couple of episodes ago, somebody asked me how I keep my sweaters from pilling. Do I use a gleaner? And I said, no, I didn't have a gleaner, and that I use this Sweater Stone, which is an all-natural product, and it looks like, it kind of looks, it's got a very, it smells like sulfur. It smells like rotten eggs. It works, and you just scrape it, and it leaves some residue, and you shake it out. And I mean, that's really all I've ever used. Well, I received a package in the mail from my cousin, and I now have a gleaner. And I don't know if you guys all use a gleaner, but this is so one side would be like to, you know, do your coat, you know, to a lint brush. One side is a lint brush, and the other side is where you put the blades. And there are several different shapes and sizes. So one is for, let's say, fine, maybe cashmere, very fine knits. The next one is for medium size, like maybe worsted weight or even sport weight. And then the one I have in it right now, because I just wore my number 9 again, and you can see not only did I have to clean my coat, but I also ran the gleaner over my number 9 because I made that in that Barocco, I think it was Barocco or Plymouth. It was 50% alpaca and 50% wool. And the alpaca does have a tendency to shed. It hasn't stopped me from wearing it, and this has made it even easier. So these little blades, there's just like a little push button, and you just pop the blade out and pop it back in. And it came in this really cute carrying case. And I know she got it from Amazon because the package came from Amazon. We didn't know that we were going to actually end up seeing each other. So, and it's just called Gleaner. And I love it. So that was a nice little tool to add to my knitting collection. And so let's see how we're doing for time. We're doing okay. What else did I want to tell you? And my cousin also gave me some yarn and a beautiful candle and some wonderful tea, orange clove spiced cinnamon tea, which I've drank it all. It was perfect. I wanted to tell you about a book, and I'm going to go get the book because I left it downstairs. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. And before I get into the book, I also did want to mention too. So when I wear a sweater, like a V-neck or my number 9 sweater that's white, or my Avaris, which is white cashmere, I put a scarf inside there so I don't get makeup or moisturizer or anything on my nice white blouse or on my white sweater. And so I just thought I'd throw that little tip in because it saves you some heartache, especially with your sweaters. Okay, so I was saying that my thoughts for 2024 were to continue to cultivate gratitude, kindness, love. And I saw a podcast with Oprah and Arthur Brooks that got my attention. And it was episode 1 of a podcast that's all about this book, Build the Life You Want by Arthur Brooks and Oprah Winfrey. Now, Arthur Brooks is a PhD and he teaches at Harvard, and he's got quite the history, but now he teaches a course on happiness at Harvard. And he has worked in think tanks. I won't tell, well, maybe I will tell you a little bit about him. So Arthur Brooks is the Parker Gilbert Montgomery Professor at Harvard Kennedy School and Professor of Management Practice at Harvard Business School, where he teaches courses on happiness. He is the creator of the popular How to Build a Life column in the Atlantic newspaper. And that's how Oprah found out about him during COVID. She was reading the Atlantic and she found herself looking forward to his column. And then she contacted him and said, hey, maybe we should write a book together. So this is the book. I haven't started it yet, but I did watch that first episode. And it's, I think it's going to be right up our alley. And so if you're interested in adding another book to your list this year, you might want to give this a shot, or at least check out the interview with Oprah and Arthur Brooks. Other books I'm thinking about, probably going to be historical fiction. That's my favorite genre. I will say that I read the book Horse by Geraldine Brooks, and I loved that book. You're going to be in 2 different time frames. You're going to be pretty much now and also in the mid-1800s. You're going to spend some time in Lexington, Kentucky, and in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian. And you might want to take a peek at that one. That was very good. It was called Horse by Geraldine Brooks. And I'm putting together my reading list, so I really don't know what else is going to be on there yet. But if you have any suggestions, I can read anything. I love historical fiction, but I can read fantasy. I can read just about anything. So if you've got something that you love, that you really enjoyed in 2023, pop me a little note maybe. Okay, so let's see. What else do we have? I think that's it for now. And I'm going to finish working on my Fossveien. I'm going to do some yarn winding, and I hope that you are enjoying winter wherever you live. And if you're in the warm weather, good for you. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, I hope you're staying cozy and you've got your knitting and you've got books and you've got a great hot cup of something to drink. And maybe we together can focus on gratitude and kindness and just shine our light on others, because I think the world needs us to shine our light. Okay, bye-bye. See you soon.